Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters. Inshallah, you're doing well. And welcome to another live session about martyrs from our page, Guiding Stars. Alhamdulillah, this session we have the honor and tawfiq to be at the holy shrine of Muhammad alayhi salam and enjoy this beautiful scenery while we talk about lifestyle of martyrs and about this book with Father. At last session we talked about this book. We covered about less than half of the book, and inshallah tonight we're going to continue. So I hope you're familiar. You took part in our previous live, so you're familiar with the story of this book, but I will give you a summary before we inshallah continue. So this book, as we talked about, was about the near-death experience of one of the children of martyrs, Mohammad Taheri, who's now a pharmacist living in Mashhad near the shrine. And his father, martyr Mohammad Taheri, was one of the commanders of, Iranian fronts. So this person was a very pious person. We talked about some of his stories, and tonight we will talk more. And we got to the point, this book, we got to the point where we talked about his near-death experience and when he came back from coma, and he had seen something, and now inshallah we'll talk about that. But before we start our main topic, let's all say salam to our beloved Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam. Assalamu alayka ya Ali ibn Musa Rida. Assalamu alayka ya qarib al-ghuraba. Assalamu alayka ya mu'in al-du'afa wal-fuqara. Inshallah, in the presence of Imam Rida alayhi salam, I hope we have a good session tonight. So we said that this brother Mustafa, he had a near-death experience. He was in a coma, and he says that this is very common in people who have near-death experiences, that they see themselves in a tunnel, a black tunnel, moving towards light. So he experienced the same thing, and then he talks about the barzakhi heaven that he went to. He says that everything there looked real and nothing would bother you. For example, the sunshine there would not bother you, and also there was nothing as coldness and hotness, things like that, or hunger, sickness. Nothing of these things were present in that heaven. And he says that whatever you longed for, whatever you wanted, it would be present for you immediately. On the trees there were all sorts of fruits, and they looked very ripped and shining. And he said, for example, I liked bananas, and I thought to myself, how can I pick one of these bananas? As soon as I thought about picking a banana and eating it, I saw that a banana was, separated from the tree and came towards me so that I could eat it. And he says that eating there in that heaven, barzakh heaven, as well as the heaven in the resurrection, is not for example, if you drink, it's not for quenching your thirst, or not because you're hungry. It's like more like entertainment, because you don't become hunger there. So after that you eat. It's just for enjoying and for pleasure. And he says that in this world, usually joys and enjoyments, they're accompanied by some kind of pain or some suffering or something like that. For example, if you eat too much, then you have a stomachache, or you have to try a lot to get something and things like that. But joys there does not have anything like this. And okay, so he talks about heaven, that most of us might have heard about them. And then he says, let's go to page 41. I'd like to say salam to all the newcomers. Welcome. We're talking about this book, Second Life, on this book. And another thing which is common in near-death experiences is that when their soul departs their body, then they can see people around them, usually in the hospital or even elsewhere. They can move there, and they can not only they can see the people, but they can also read their mind. They can see what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and some of them, depending on their level, they can even see about the fate of that person, how they will, turn out, and what will be their final destiny. So he says that, Brother Mustafa says that while I was on the hospital bed, I could hear and see people around me crying. But it was not important for me, because I knew that this is what God has decided for me, and for sure there's some good in it. And now I'm in the best position in the Barzakhi heaven. And also I would see all those people, what things and what states they would go through in their life up to their death. And I realized that if they practice patience for this, incidents that I was in, I would see that it will have a great effect and positivity in their destiny. So because of realizing this, I was not upset at all. And he says that in that world there's nothing, no time limitation or place limitation. Here in this world you have to wait for tomorrow to see what happens tomorrow, but there you can see all the future whenever, for example, you're allowed. Okay, let's go to the next part. 48. Okay, so he says that while he was wandering in heaven and seeing all the beautiful trees and flowers and beautiful people, he saw that I saw a young good-looking man approaching me, and as soon as I looked at him, I realized who he was. It was his father. His face just looked like a few days before his martyrdom, not aging. And he came to me and hugged me, and I really enjoyed it. And I realized that his status, his position in heaven is very high. I realized it because of how the angels would respect him. They would not respect people the same, depending on their level, they would respect him more or less. And his father said that after talking and greeting for a little bit, he said that I have to go now because there are some missions that God has given to us in this world for the people in the world, that we help people. With the permission of God, we and some other martyrs, we try to, go and help people who have interceded us for their problems. So this is why that, we see that martyrs, because they have a great position, they can intercede for us, not just the prophets and imams, but also all good people. In fact, some scholars, there was Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh Amoli says that I had a haja, I had a request, and I, for example, asked Imam Raza for a few times, but it was not answered. But then I asked someone, I think it was Imam Zadeh or someone like that, or a martyr, Imam Zadeh, I think, and I was given what I had asked for. And he said that it's because, for example, we should ask Imam Reza alayhi salam, Imams, for great requests. And these things we can ask for the intercession of, for example, good people, martyrs, scholars, and other people. This is one view. There are others who say that no, you can ask all you want from, as an intercession. Ask the Imam to pray for you for all your requests, big or small. Sorry, my mobile phone fell. Okay, let me see what's going on. Whenever you have a comment or question, you can leave them. Inshallah, if I can see them, I will talk about them too. So, then he talks about his meeting with the Holy Prophet that we, mentioned last session. He said that we entered a very big garden, very beautiful, and me and my father and a group of people, most of whom were from martyrs, we sat there, and in front of us was the Holy Prophet. On his right, there were the infallible Imams and, for example, Lady Fatima Zahra. And on the left were the other prophets, like Prophet Abraham, Prophet Moses, Prophet Jesus, each of them sitting based on their, for example, status. And all of them were just looking at the Holy Prophet because he was so beautiful. He says that I could not compare the beauty of the Holy Prophet to anyone else. I thought to myself, if the Holy Prophet is so much beautiful like this, so how come the Quran talks about the beauty of Hurul Ain, women in heaven and things like that? It seems, based on what he says, the more pious you are, the higher your status is in heaven, the more beautiful you look. So the Holy Prophet is, of course, the most beautiful, the most good looking in the heaven. And he said, I, for example, saw Shahid Burunsi and Haj Hamad and people like them. Not all people and not all shuhada, because not all of the martyrs are high enough to be in that meeting, for instance. And at the end, they just made me understand that now you're looking at the beauty, at the face of the creature of God, for example, the Holy Prophet. What if you are able to look at the beauty and look at God when you're going to meet Him, if you have the chance to meet Him? So you can't imagine how joyful it will be if we get to meet God, inshallah, on resurrection and enjoy looking at His beauty. So here, in a parenthesis, he talks about someone who was in that meeting, but he was not a martyr. Someone who got martyred, for example, at the front, or okay, someone is asking which page I'm on. I'm on page 51. Good that you have the book. Unfortunately, it's only in Farsi, so if you have the Farsi book, we're on page 51. So he says, Ahmad Khuddami, he was also in that meeting of martyrs with the Prophet and Imams. And so I wondered why he's in that meeting while he's not a martyr. And he said that I knew this person since I was a child, but because he and I were little at the time of a war, then we could not attend the war. So he said that although he could not attend the war because he was a child, later he tried to walk on the path of martyrs, to live like martyrs. He was actually trying to spread the word of Islam, the word of truth. He was studying mythology at university, but his life was dedicated to guiding the young people, and especially had really sincerity in all his actions, and also the satisfaction of God was very important for him. Just one example, he tells us. One day that we're hiking, mountain climbing, we realized that because of an earthquake that happened previously, there were some rocks on the road, on the path, so that it would be dangerous for the cars. While we were driving, he told me to pull over and stop, and he started picking the stones and putting them aside. And he said that maybe some drivers, they don't know about, these stones, that they fall from the mountain and they may have an accident. So he said that we tried a lot to move the stones, and alhamdulillah we did it and moved. So this is one one action that he did, which shows his concern for humanity, for people. This is interesting that we have it also in a hadith that a man might just go to heaven by one who, for example, is walking, and on the path he sees that, for example, there is a tree, some of his branches have come into the way of people and it may bother people. So he may just, for example, maybe move the branch, or I don't know, just fix it so that it will no longer bother people. Just by this action he may go to heaven. Just a simple thing like this. So he says that he had a cancer. He died at the age of 30, but his position was beside that of the martyrs. And it's not just because of this. We have it in traditions, many ahadith, that they say that if you do this, you will die as a martyr. For example, we have it, man mata ala hubb ala Muhammad, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa mata shahida. One who dies while he has the love of the Holy Prophet's household, then he dies as a martyr. Of course, not just loving with no action, as we have it in the Quran. God says that, tell them, if you love me, then do what I tell you, then follow me. This is real love. So inshallah, we too can be a martyr at the front, especially with Imam Mahdi ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. But if we don't get such tawfiq to attend, for example, a war front or things like that, there are other ways that we can become a martyr, die as a martyr, based on the traditions. If you're true faithful person, if we are, for example, we have the real love of Ahlul Bayt and the Holy Prophet and things like that. And then this is interesting. He says about the levels of people in, for example, Barzakh heaven, and also in the resurrection is probably the same. There are people who are, for example, there in Barzakh for many years, those who have died in the past, but their faith level is not enough for them to be able to visit the Holy Prophet. And the angels told him, Brother Mustafa, that you should be happy that you got such chance, such tawfiq to visit him. And they told him that, look at your father, for instance. There are some great people, for example, great scholars that are only able to visit the Holy Prophet once a year in heaven. But your father can visit the Holy Prophet twice a day. It shows his great status. So this is, if you really want to be with Ahlul Bayt in the hereafter all the time, or at least, for example, every day, then we need to practice piety. We need to be their real follower so that we get to visit them, and not just once a year or once in 10 years or even more. And 51. 61. Let me see if we have any questions so far. I'd like to say salam again to all the newcomers. Welcome all. We are at the Holy Shrine of Imam Rida alayhi salam, talking about this beautiful book, Baba with Father. So, okay, now that we're in Mashhad, let's talk about this memory. After he comes back to this world, he says that I had a dream. 51. Sorry. Yes. He says that I had a dream and I saw one of my father's friends, martyrs, in my dream. I was very happy to see him, and also they were happy that I'm, for example, healthy now and I can continue my studies. And also I knew his son, that martyr's son. He told me, do you know anything about my son? He said, yes, I know that he's a good student studying in one of good universities in Tehran. But that martyr said in an upset way that why didn't he continue his education in Mashhad? He was probably from Mashhad. I wish he just continued his studies like you did, studying in Mashhad. I said that he's studying in a very good university. And he said that, well, I wish he would stay with Imam Rida and would use the barakah of Mashhad. At that time, Brother Mustafa says, I didn't realize why he said so and why he was sad. But because he was the son of a martyr, he was like Basiji, he was a pious person, and I knew about him. But he said that later I found that unfortunately, because of the atmosphere of that university, little by little, he changed his path, and based on the recommendation of, for example, some of his professors, he migrated to another country, and later I realized that he put away all his faith and living, not a pious life. So sometimes it's not true for everyone that, for example, everyone should stay in holy places like Mashhad, Karbala. Of course, if you have the chance to study and work and live in such holy cities, it would be great, but it's not for everyone. Sometimes you have to be somewhere else because of your duties or family or things like that. But the criteria is that you should be able to practice your faith in a healthy way, without dangers, without great dangers. If you can practice your faith wherever you are, then it's okay to stay there. But if you think that that place, the atmosphere is dangerous for your faith, harming it, then you better move to another place where you can. It's interesting that here in the Holy Shrine of Imam Rida alayhi salam, one of my friends told me about his friend who here in Sheikh Bahai's tomb, is near here in Azadi, between Azadi courtyard and Goharshad courtyard, you can visit the grave of Sheikh Bahai. He said that I was reciting a Fatiha for Sheikh Bahai when there was a young man, not very young, with casual clothes came to me and we started a conversation. And I realized that he really had the knowledge of tafsir of Quran, not just something but he could, for example, see hidden aspects of the Quran and think that I didn't know. He would tell me. My friend's friend was scholar. So, and even he told me something about my private life, about my, for example, my wife, that I even didn't know. And then I checked with my wife, And she said, yes. For example, I got mad at you a few months ago when you said so, but I didn't tell you anything. So he even told him about something he did not know. And he had the tafsir of Quran. And the interesting, the astonishing thing is that he was actually living in the US, a place where we think that is not, for example, a good place for living as a, for example, Muslim, because of all the things that you encounter there. But you see, this man could get to such high level of spirituality in even that environment. But it's not the case for everyone. People are different. For you, if it works out, then yeah, it's okay. But if it doesn't, then you cannot in the hereafter make alibis that because I was in this atmosphere, I did so and so, I had done these things. No, you have no excuse. If you can't actually fight your atmosphere, then maybe you should move to another place. Okay, so now let's go to some of the things that the Holy Prophet told in that meeting. We have 10 minutes. I hope we can cover the important parts of this book. He says that the things that the Holy Prophet said, they were nothing new. All of them, for example, were mentioned in our traditions. But the fact that I could hear it from the Holy Prophet was the most important thing, and it was really effective that I could hear it from him. The first thing that the Holy Prophet said was about divine tests. That in wherever we are and in whatever level that we are, God tests us, and especially He tests us on the areas that we have, for example, drawback, we have a weakness. If He tests us in these areas, it's because for us to grow in these, weak points. And then he said that the Holy Prophet told the martyrs that you could actually fix your drawbacks, correct yourself, and be successful in divine tests, and you were successful. So the Holy Prophet was, of course, talking to them. And he says a lot of things. For example, the Holy Prophet says that Muslims at least recite Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, guide us through the right path, at least 10 times a day, but they do not try to move in this path of guiding, because based on the traditions, if we want something, if we ask for something, but we do not try for it, then we are not sincere in our asking. If we ask God to elevate our status, to give us spirituality, but we just wait there and do nothing, this is actually kind of mocking ourselves. So when we have these du'as, we should also try so that God, inshallah, gives us what we want. And also the Holy Prophet said that some people ask God to prevent them from deviation and misguiding. But when God, for this reason, makes something happen for them because of this intention of them, they immediately get upset and they shout and they, for example, cry and they complain. It means that God puts them through some trials, but they don't know about it, they get mad and they complain. But you, martyrs, whatever you saw in this world, you remembered God and you had patience in, difficulties, and you knew every moment of your life that you're remembering God, you're not actually harming. Okay, so let me tell you something about the miracles of Imam Rida alayhi salam in this book. So he talks about his father-in-law, who was the friend of his father. He was a very pious man. He had been at the front, but he did not become a martyr. And this father-in-law of Brother Mustafa tells him about some of the karama of Imam Rida alayhi salam, that now we have the tawfiq of being in his shrine. He said that once I was in dire need of some money, 3 million for 6 months. And wherever I went, I could not find any money. And when I was at the holy shrine, I told Imam Rida, I thought to myself, when you have Imam Rida, where do you have to go? Where should you go? So I said to Imam Rida, I need to pay 3 million today and my honor is in danger. So, for example, give me some money. So he said, as I was talking to Imam Rida, I saw an old friend who was like a soldier like me, and when he wanted to say goodbye, he said that I'm actually going abroad for a few months and I have some money. I don't want to put it in the bank. I wanted to, like borrow it to you. So I lend it to you. So he gave the money to him. It was actually 2 million. He said he left, and after some time he came back and said, there's another 1 million left, I don't need it too, and he gave it to me. So he said, let this be with you for 6 months, and when I come back, then I will take it from you. So you see, this is how Imam Rida alayhi salam helped him. And another point about his father-in-law is that he was a very pious man. And the thing about pious people is that when they ask God something, God gives them. One of the things he asked God was that he wanted his body to be like unknown and not to go to where they wash the dead people. So this is what he told his son-in-law to Brother Mustafa. He told that I have prayed that my body is disappeared so that I'm not washed before, for example, my funeral. So something happens that in a train accident that had some chemical in it about 20 years ago near Neyshabur, 350 people died because of a big explosion at that time. One of them was this father-in-law of Brother Mustafa, who no trace of his body was left except a piece of paper about his shift at the holy shrine. So, Salam brother, can you please send the name of Okay, someone is asking for prayers. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. I will tell you some of the stories of martyr Mohammad Taheri, the father of this. Page 128. So I told you about how this martyr Mohammad Taheri, he had studied a lot, and at the war front in their stronghold where people only, for example, have their guns and things like that, something that would be eye-catching in his stronghold were the armor boxes in which he had put books in them. And whenever he had time, Martyr Mohammad Taheri, he would not waste his time and study books of Martyr Taheri and Dasqaib and hadith books and things like that. And even when there were classes in the break, he would not waste his time and read the books, and also encourage other people to read books. As a Muslim, we should not waste our time at any times. Sometimes you say, I didn't expect my time to be wasted, but we should always have a plan B. For example, I'm going to a party, I'm going to a class. I should think to myself, maybe it is cancelled, or maybe something happens that I should wait, for example, in the taxi, or in the bus, or for the class, or anything else. So I should have a plan B, like a book with me, or something to listen to, so that my time is not wasted. I have a friend, he's a Hawza student, and he always has got a book with him, carrying a book with him, even when he goes to a bus or anywhere else, and he studies. He says, once I wanted to go to, for example, to a grocery store to buy something, and I was doubtful whether I should take my book or not. I thought, I'm just going to buy something and come back. But at the time I wanted to leave, I said, okay, no problem, let me just take it. So he says, I went to the store, and I don't know what happened, that he had to wait for 5 or 10 minutes for the shopkeeper to come and sell him things. So he used that few minutes to read his book, and he was very happy that he did not miss and his time was not wasted. So we have, if in the hereafter they ask us, why did you waste your time? For example, you have a class, your teacher comes a few minutes late. Then can you, in the hereafter, say that my time was wasted because of my teacher? Your excuse will not be accepted. Let me tell you a story of Ayatollah Burujerdi, the great marja of Qom, and actually all Shia world at his time. So he says that it is said that once when he was late for one of his classes, and he came to class, some of the students, they complained and said, for example, you came late and our time was wasted and things like that. He said that, well, why didn't you use your time in a positive way? I myself, I have memorized, I think it was 12 juz. I have memorized 12 juz of Quran just in these, times that you usually would waste. So we have no excuse if our time is wasted without learning something or doing something good, or helping someone or things like that. And let's see, I think it will be our last story. $135. So before, they have like a battle. They were sitting in the tent of commanders, and people were commanders. They were talking, and little by little their talk led to backbiting. And suddenly martyr Muhammad asked us, do you know what's the meaning of ruku and sujud? First, it looked like a very simple question, but as different answers were actually expressed, we learned, a lot of good things. And Haji Muhammad, he would complete the answers, and we were focusing on the prayers. So this way, artistically, artfully, he could, change the direction of our conversation from backbiting to something useful, to something spiritual. So this is what he always would do. Whenever he realized that people are talking about unnecessary things, he would teach us something new so that our time is not wasted. And he would tell us that most of the time in our gatherings, we talked about things that are not good, or it's about backbiting, but you try to, in your family gatherings or your friends, try to be the one who is actually the center of the talks and help people be familiar with spirituality. This is something very important. So when we are faced with backbiting in our gatherings, this is the best thing to do. If you're able to talk about something useful about our religion, about science, about current affairs, something good, then it's better that we do that. We get the handle of the conversation and lead it towards something good. But if we can't, for example, I don't know, for some reason we can't do that to change the path of the conversation, then we should, for example, maybe tell them about the thing that they're doing, which is something bad. And if they don't change it, then we cannot stay there anymore, and we have to, for example, leave that gathering. But this is the best thing to do if we can do. So there are some more stories about this great martyr, for example, about his tawassul to Lady Fatima al-Zahra and the miracles that they had at the front with this tawassul, and other stories that, unfortunately, because we don't have time, I cannot continue. But those of you who know Farsi, you can buy this book online or just get a hard copy and enjoy reading this book. As I told you, his son, which is a pharmacist, is living in Mashhad, and he's a great person. He even says that he saw everything that would happen in future, but he forgets them. But whenever they happen, he remembers them, and remembers even something more. Okay, so when will be the next session, inshallah, and on which book? Pure poetry, I don't know. I don't know. One thing that actually prevents me from doing these lives about martyrs is that, unfortunately, I think to myself that I'm no way near the martyrs. My lifestyle is near like that of the martyrs' lifestyle, and I'm really embarrassed and ashamed of the martyrs that I come here and talk about them. I wish there were good people who would come and talk about this, but I hope, inshallah, maybe in the coming weeks we can do another live. You can also suggest to us what book you would like us to talk about, and maybe if we can, we will talk about that. So once again, I'd like to thank you, my dear brothers and sisters, for joining this live session. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something useful about this martyr and his son, and enjoyed looking at the beautiful golden dome of our Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam. May our beloved Imam invite all of you to his shrine soon. I will inshallah pray for you, and you too keep me in your prayers. Until the next time that we will meet again, fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.